Hi and welcome to my channel Etheria. My name is Zina, and in this video I would like to show you how I made this tote bag using scrap fabrics only. And she has a drawstring, so no zippers this time. She's loaded with my gym stuff, so I'm not gonna show you what's inside. But yeah, so let me tell you a little bit how I came to this idea. Basically, I have tons and tons and tons of scrap fabrics laying around from my previous projects, and I generally do not want to be part of the stirring textile waste industry, so I tend to keep them all in a basket until I figure out what I can do with them. Yeah, so this time it's a tote bag with all the scrap pieces. I also have pouches. You can also find them on my Etsy store if you want to. The link is in the description box below. And yeah, I really hope you will like this video. Stay conscious of your footprint in the fashion industry. And yeah, if you want to DIY it yourself, then please continue watching this video because I will show you step by step on how to do it. And with that said, happy sewing! I started this project off with a sketch of what I wanted the tote bag to look like. Then I started to draft the pattern for it. I wanted the bag to be big since I want to use it as my go-to bag when I go to the gym or fabric shopping. To make your life easier, here are the measurements and pieces I cut out to make the tote bag. Feel free to pause the video and take a screenshot. The measurement can be adjusted to your own needs, so you do not have to follow the exact measurements that are on display. To create volume, I drew up a 5x5 cm box that will be cut later once the sides and bottoms are sewn together. For the lining, I made the box 6x6 cm. For the pockets, I drew it straight on the pattern itself because the muslin fabric I was using is see-through enough that I can just trace it on top. You will see it later when we go to the pocket part. I recently saw a hack where you take a stiff paper and draw a guide of 1 cm, 1.5 cm, 2 cm, etc. depending on your project, and then you take your fabric, fold it to the guide measurements and press it on with an iron. You will see me using it later in this video if you don't know what I mean yet. Before starting the project and cutting any type of pieces, I give everything a good press. I folded the fabric in half and laid out my pattern piece. For the outer layer, I gave about 1.5 to 2 cm allowance. The reason is that when I will come to the quilting part later on, the fabric might shrink or get slightly distorted. But because of the allowance I added, I can put my pattern and cut it again after the quilting process to get the right size. For the lining, I cut it according to the pattern. Here I added the tulle on top of the outer piece. And again, I added more allowance because it will shift, and when adding all the scrap fabrics, there will be some volume to accommodate. For the outer piece, I added fuse to strengthen the fabric and give it some structure. You can skip this part if you want. I made a version without it and it turned out perfectly fine, though I would definitely recommend to add fuse on the straps. Without it, the fabric becomes quite flimsy in my opinion. If you're making this bag, you probably have some textiles or scrap fabrics you want to disappear. Take these textiles or scraps and cut them into tiny pieces. The process is calming, especially when you're listening to some music. I think here I was listening to Florence and the Machine. What do you guys listen when you are working? Also, be warned, at some point you won't be able to feel your hand anymore from all the cutting. Now the fun can begin. This personally is my favorite part. I love laying the scrap pieces on the fabric. Here I will suggest to put as much as you can, but be cautious not to make it too bulky, otherwise your sewing machine might have a very hard time to stitch all these layers together. Once you're happy with the amount you put and how it lays, add the tulle on top and start pinning the edges down as well as the inside, because once you start sewing everything will start to shift. So my suggestion, pin really well. I would also recommend to leave some space on the edges to make sewing the pieces together later on a bit more easier, because at some point it will get quite bulky. Now to the tedious part. I align my footer to the edge of my fabric and use it as my guide. The next row I use the stitch line as my guide. Continue until you quilted your 2 pieces. Watch or listen something because this part will take you hours. Don't forget to take breaks and stretch. Your back and neck will thank you for sure. Take your pattern piece again and lay it out on the outer fabric to mark and cut out the excess fabric. Do it on both sides. Pinned the sides and bottom together, and here I actually forgot to film the next part, so as you can see I marked my 5x5 centimeter box. Basically just gonna cut it and then you're gonna align seam to seam, make sure that both face the same direction, then you're gonna pin it and stitch them together. Here is where this little hack comes in handy. For the straps, I folded the edges on both sides by 1 centimeter and then folded the whole strap in half and ironed it to make the sewing process a little bit easier. I ended up sewing a couple more lines to match the quilted look. I think it matches really well and gives a unified look. I didn't film this step, but here is a picture of the strap. I also forgot to film the part where I attach it to the outer bag. It is straightforward though, all you have to do is place the strap on the outer bag and stitch it together. But let's move on to the pockets. So for the pockets I used some scrap pieces from my draping process that were big enough to put them on the pattern to trace. I ended up with 4 pieces because I wanted to add pockets on each side of my tote bag. Lay the pockets right side facing each other and pin. When you take it to the sewing machine, make sure that you leave a little gap to fold it inside out. I cut the corner diagonally close to the seam to create a crispy look on the edges. Adding pockets to the lining was quite straightforward. Just lay the pieces on the right side of the lining fabric and sew it. Just like the outer fabric, I stitched the edges and the bottom of the bag together, right side facing each other. Just make sure here that the pockets are showing the right direction on the bag opening. You definitely don't want one facing up and the other down. Cut again a box on the bottom of the edges and cut them. This time the box is 6 by 6 centimeter. Give the seams a good press, and for the bottom I used a seam roller since it was difficult to place an iron here. Same as the corners of the outer layer, we're gonna line the seams together and then sew the edges together. Okay, so now to the closure part of the bag. For this, cut your piece and sew the corners together and give it a good press. I took my guide again and folded the edges 2 times to create a pocket for the drawstring to pass through. So here's actually where I realized that I made a mistake. I had to open the side seams because I realized that the raw edges of the seam will be visible and therefore they will fray. The other mistake I made was that I didn't leave a gap for the drawstring to pass through later. I marked the point where the folding was, and using a seam ripper I opened the area around the side seams. I wished I left more seam allowance on the edges, but I did not thought about it when I was creating this bag. Basically, you want to fold the seams inwards and top stitch it. I was lucky that I still had enough side seam to work with. Okay, we are almost there. The next step is where we see the whole bag coming slowly together. Take the drawstring closure piece and align the seam to the outer back and pin it. I made sure that the folded part is facing down. Sew it together to keep everything in place before we're gonna add the lining after. Place the outer fabric inside the lining and align the side seams together, and then stitch it all together. So here's another fun part of this project. Take your seam ripper and open the seam wide enough to take the bulky outer layer out. Then I took the lining that I ripped and stitched it neatly back together. Here I was really excited to see the bag coming together, especially the pockets looked super neat. Okay, now all I had to do was to top stitch the edge to keep the lining and straps in place. For the closure, I took some leftover cord that I had from an old project. You can also use ribbon if you want, but you also need a safety pin. Here's a little tip. Rub some tape around the cord and then attach the safety pin. I did one without it and the cord kept unraveling. It took forever to get it to the next opening. I created a little diagram on how I did the drawstring since I didn't manage to create a proper visual on how I did it. this is it. Since I made this bag, I have been using it almost every time I go out. I love that it's totally unique and spacious. For me, this is a reflection of all the projects I have made so far. Each scrap piece has its story. I hope you like this video, and if you have made this bag, please tag me. I would really love to see your version. Thank you for watching this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.